So there was a video that I saw of Joe Biden saying that Ukraine, or rather the headline saying that Biden wants Ukraine to potentially give Russia land in a negotiated settlement. Let's watch this video and listen to what Biden's saying, because it doesn't, in my opinion, really match the headline. Let's take a look.
Mr. President, does Ukraine have to cede territory to achieve some peace?
You know, and you've been always fair with me. From the beginning, I've said, and not everyone's agreed with me, nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. It's their territory. I'm not going to tell them what they should and shouldn't do. But it appears to me that at some point along the line, there's going to have to be a negotiated settlement here. And what that entails, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows at the time. But in the meantime, we're going to continue to put the Ukrainians in a position where they can defend themselves.
I don't know, man. It's a little weird to me, because I feel like it's the reporter who said that, and then they're saying that Biden, confirmed it.
President, does Ukraine have to cede territory?
See, the guy asking the question says, does Ukraine have to cede territory to achieve some peace? The captions are a bit wrong.
To achieve some peace.
You know, and you've been always fair with me. From the beginning, I've said, and not everyone's agreed with me, nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. It's their territory. I'm not going to tell them what they should and shouldn't do. But it appears to me that at some point along the line, there's going to have to be a negotiated settlement here. And what that entails, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows.
Well, I really don't know what to tell you guys. He's basically he's not ruling out, but he's not saying yes either. He says, he's sort of implying it, right? There's going to have to be a negotiated settlement, and I don't know what that entails. I guess he's implying it, but he's not explicitly saying it. Here, let's take a look at this from the White House, okay? Although, pay attention. This video that I just showed you from Biden is from June 3rd. This one, the one I'm about to show you, is from March 29th, just so you understand, okay?
The British Prime Minister said today that they won't accept anything less than a full withdrawal of all Russian forces from Ukrainian territory. Does President Biden share that view that reduced military activity is not enough?
Well, we are going to allow the Ukrainians to execute on these negotiations. It's not our role to begin the negotiation. Again, our role is to strengthen Ukraine on the battlefield, to try to strengthen Ukraine at the negotiating table by applying these sanctions and costs to Russia. But I'm not going to prejudge or predetermine an outcome for that conversation.
Right. So they're saying underneath that the White House communications director, Bedingfield, that said that Ukraine will decide for itself whether to give up territory to end Russia's invasion, declining to embrace a British stance that all Russian troops must leave. Well, I mean, I don't know why they dwell on these hypotheticals, but just to make this clear, what they're referring to when they ask this question is, well, several things, actually. It's not just Russia, because, Russia recognized those two breakaway republics. And, when we talk about DPR and LPR, it actually goes past the regions that, hold on, in the oblast. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. Yeah, you see, it goes past the regions that were already held. Take a look. So the ones that are, again, this is from the start, right? We're talking from start of the war. The ones that are in light pink, that's DPR and LPR held areas. And what the Russians were recognizing, it wasn't clear. Do they mean just these held areas, or really the proper drawn out borders? So that's one area where people are thinking, well, does Ukraine have to cede that? What's the settlement going to look like? Does Ukraine have to recognize these republics? What's going to happen? Now, keep in mind, these are, republics that are not recognized as member states by the UN. Most countries on Earth do not recognize the LPR and DPR. Just side note, I found it funny how quickly Syria was to recognize them. Like they just want to. They're completely behind Russia. Look, I think just because you're Syrian doesn't mean you have to like completely support everything Russia does. I understand though, but that a lot of Syrians feel that Russia is owed a debt of gratitude for saving Syria from Al-Qaeda, from NATO, and so on. But still, you can thank Russia for doing that, and at the same time exercise nuance in regards to Ukraine. So I'm just saying, in terms of territory, when people say what territory does Ukraine have to cede, these are two areas that are still completely unknown. What's going to happen? So LPR and DPR. So Crimea is another one. By the way, LPR and DPR, for those of you who don't know what they stand for, is Donetsk People's Republic and Luhansk People's Republic. Now, Crimea, right? Crimea, this is, if I recall correctly, when there was still a Soviet Union, Russia gave it to Ukraine. So originally it is Russian, and this is in the 50s, I think. And in 2014, the Russians, they got into a lot of trouble for de facto annexing it. Although, again, Russians would not view that as annexing it. They view it as their land. I'm just telling you the points of view, the different points of view, because, internationally, the peninsula, Crimea, is recognized as Ukrainian. And even in Russia, you're not going to find everybody who supports the idea of, Crimea being Russian. But I'm just telling you that originally, if I'm not mistaken, in the Cold War, it switched to Ukraine. It was given to Ukraine. Anyway, my point is that Crimea is another area where, it's not really clear, does Ukraine get it back? And that's from 2014. As a matter of fact, the blowback from this in 2014 regarding Crimea is what caused Russia to start de-dollarizing its reserves, because they realized, oh crap, they're threatening to put Russia under severe sanctions to remove our banks from SWIFT, all this stuff. And so the Russians started, they started basically buying less dollars and selling their dollars to make sure that, their foreign exchange reserves weren't completely made up of dollars, which they then wouldn't be able to use. And also, they started developing their own alternative to the SWIFT. So we have LPR, DPR, Crimea, and let's look at the current positions right now of Russian forces. So, as you know, the map is constantly changing every day. Now, however, we see here you go. You see that the Russian and Russian-backed forces are generally concentrated in the south and in the east of the country, right? You see nothing around Kiev anymore or Kharkiv. So the question is now, what's going to happen? Is it just about LPR and DPR? Is it about Crimea? Or what about this? Are the Russians ever going to leave from here? So I honestly, I don't think anyone predicted or knew where how far the Russians are going to get. So my guess is that when people ask these questions to Biden, or they ask the White House press secretary about Ukraine, quote unquote, having a settlement where they would cede territory, usually they're referring to these three issues. These are the most prominent things. So again, internationally speaking, this is Ukraine. Crimea, this is Ukraine. LPR, DPR, that's Ukraine. And on the Russian side, Crimea is Russian, always belonged to them. Keep in mind, by the way, it gives them bigger access to the Black Sea, right? So I think that's also very important to keep in mind, but it's not the only reason. And the Russians have already recognized 2 breakaway republics. So you might get a clearer picture with this map. This is a lot clearer. Luhansk, Donetsk, Crimea. What happens to these territories? What happens? We have to see, man. We have to see. I understand the Ukrainians. Absolutely. Absolutely. When it comes to Syria, for example, and this is what frustrates me so much, is that, you have Wolf Blitzer on CNN asking Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, if he will recognize Syria's Golan Heights as Syrian. Right? Basically, he's asking if the Biden administration will roll back Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital and Syria's occupied Golan Heights as Israeli. And let's talk about the Golan Heights. The Golan Heights have been occupied since 1967 by Israel. You have, I can't even count how many UN Security Council resolutions that say very clearly Israel must withdraw. Israel annexing the Golan Heights, the Syrian Golan Heights. Israel annexing Jerusalem. The UN said, null and void. We don't recognize this. Get out. And so it's extremely frustrating that the Americans, they're happy to keep Trump's policies. You see how dirty they are? They love everything Trump. Trump was such a fucking blessing for the State Department. You have no idea. I keep repeating this. People just don't get it. Man, everything that Trump did in foreign policy, the Biden administration, any administration right now, would have loved to do. But he did it for them. He catches any potential flack, and they just quietly, take the reins and don't change a thing because they're fine with it. All the sanctions, all the Abraham Accords, everything, all these favors he did for Israel. It's incredible. So sorry for the tangent, but just going back, I understand the Ukrainians' position. Excuse me, of having their country chopped up in 15 pieces. It's horrible, right? I look at a map of Syria, I see Israel in the Golan Heights. I see the United States in the northeast occupying the oil. I see another U.S. base in El Tanaf. I see Turkey in Idlib. And then, of course, Al-Qaeda also in Idlib. And they're using Turkish currency there, like de facto annexed already, It's heartbreaking, and you look at that and, you wonder when is that going to end? In regards to Syria, of course, I think what will happen when things settle down, Syria will still be Syria, right? I don't think the territory is going to change. And that also includes Israel occupying the Golan Heights. But I think, hopefully, the Americans will leave, Turkey will leave. And it's so funny, you also have people who call the Iranians and the Russians occupiers. No, they're not occupiers. They were invited legally, not illegally. They're not invaders. They're not occupying anything. I'm sorry, when you walk down the street in Damascus, do you see Iranian forces? Do you see Iranian checkpoints or Russian checkpoints? No. When the Americans, on the other hand, are at the oil bases, at the oil wells, stealing the oil and funneling it with tankers into Iraq. Out in the open. They don't even care to hide it. Plundering and occupying. So, in any case, I just wanted to go back to Ukraine and say I understand the Ukrainians. Their point of view. It's really messed up. And this is, of course, in addition to the destruction and to the war and the refugees. It's horrible. It's horrible, man. It's really horrible. I really worry, because when you see this kind of like blood, this bloodlust, this capitalist greed, like let's send as many weapons as possible, let's make as much money as possible. They're not interested in ending the war. So no matter how wrong Russia is, how do you reconcile that with people that are just hell-bent on prolonging the war as long as possible just to make money? How do you reconcile the two? How do you solve that? It's terrible. And my gut feeling, although I could be wrong, I don't think that any settlement, potential settlement, will include LPR and DPR, maybe Crimea, but we'll see. This is pure speculation. And, the only thing that we can all wish for is a swift, immediate end to the war so, people can live.